I'm playing the Elden Ring DLC for 7 days because I just beat the main game in my last video. Instead of that did well, I'd make a video on the DLC, and well, here we are 1.5 thousand views later. So that means I'll be going from the beginning at the Gravesite Plains all the way to the Gates of Divinity, where we fight the final boss and beat the game, who will remain unnamed for now because I don't want to spoil the game too much for you guys, and then go around and defeat every other remembrance boss in the game to claim all their souls and become the Elden Lord 2.0. Well, that's what I'm calling it anyways. But before we even get to the DLC, how do we even get there in the first place? Well, for those of you that watched my last video, you know that I fought a guy named Mogwin, who is a follower of Miquella. And once we kill him, we speak to this girl named Leda, who tells us that she was guided here by faith and pretty much alludes to us that she, just like Mo, is also a follower of Miquella, as she calls him Miquella the Kind, and tells us to touch the withered arm to travel to the realm of shadows where Miquella now dwells. And in my last video, I didn't read any of that and just walked up to the arm and touched it and accidentally went to the DLC without even knowing it. And once I got to the Gravesite Plains is when I realized that I should not be here right now, as the most I did was touch the first grace and find the first map of the area before leaving and heading back to the main game to beat it. But since I've done everything now, it's finally time to go back and deal with the new adventure set out for us in the Gravesite Plains. At the moment I got there, the first thing I did was of course explore, with my plan being off rip to cover the outer edges of the map that I could see first and then move to the inside, so I was confident enough that I didn't miss anything on the outside. And that plan seemed to have paid off nicely, as I managed to find the first church area being the Church of Consolation, as when I entered I was met with 3 new soldier enemies, 2 of which were just chilling on the ground sleeping, while the main guy dripped out in a mace and shield was pacing around. I initially tried to sneak up on him, but got scared when I saw this guy just slumped over on the ground near the entrance, and at that point it was too late, because as I started approaching the big guy, he turned around and started coming at me, in which my first instinct was to attack the sleeping guy because I did not want to deal with him if he got aggro due to me fighting the main guy. And after quickly taking him out, I get to work on the main guy, who isn't that big of a deal, as he's just like any other soldier in the game, who thankfully also reacts to my hits unlike some other enemies in this game. But I do take him up pretty easily along with the other sleeping guards, sorry man. And after taking all 3 of these guys, I head over to the item at the front of the church and find my first of many Scadutree fragments that I will be finding throughout this game, as these things are going to be really important throughout this playthrough, since this, along with leveling up my stats, is going to be how I get stronger, as this time I didn't just skip past the tutorial dialogue like I've done before. And pretty much to sum up what these do is I find these around the map and consume them at graces, which increases my ability to deal and negate damage, pretty much making me stronger overall. But it's important to note that these only have an effect on me in the DLC, so if I go back to the main game to do anything, these will be completely useless. After that, I did a little bit more exploring ahead, where I managed to find a blessing of Marika in this sort of dark corner area over here, which I totally forgot about as soon as I got it, because after that I just went back to the Gravesite Plains grace and used the Scadutree fragment I just got, as this is where I'll be upgrading the fragments I get. There's also a second set of fragments that I can get that are a little more common, called Revered Spirit Ash Blessings, which does the same thing as the Scadutree fragments, but for my horse Torrent and any summons that I decide to use, which I won't be using in this playthrough whatsoever. But after doing that and making it day again, I set my sights on the Scorched Ruin, and as soon as I arrived, I was met with a bunch of these dark phantom enemies that I was able to take out in one hit, so I was able to clear them all out pretty easily. There wasn't much to find at the actual ruins though, other than a few things here and there, but it did lead me to the next grace and whatever the fuck that is, as before dealing with that monstrosity, I explored the area a little more, running into more of these phantom guys, and apparently they're pet dogs as well, but also running into one of the most annoying enemies in this game, being these birds, because these guys don't look like a big deal right now, but they become such a pain in the ass later on, just you wait. But after dealing with him, I set my sights on this structure on the map, as on the way there I run into more of these bird bastards, as well as these things which I thought were enemies but turned out to be neutral enemies that became angry when I attacked them, sort of like the jellyfish in the main game, only these guys are a lot more erratic and more scary looking. But after realizing that, I just left them alone until they became calm again and head on forward, where I arrived at the Western Nameless Mausoleum, and the first boss in the DLC being the Knight of the Solitary Jail. And I call him the first boss in the game because to me that's what he is, since his fight is no fucking joke. Like, he legit managed to kill me 2 times during this fight, and I usually cream these tarnished guys on the first try, but this guy was clearly in a completely different class, because what the hell is that? He also does a bunch of jumping attacks that I was not expecting, because out of all the tarnished motherfuckers I've fought over the course of this game, none of them have ever done any attacks like mine, other than the Metyr of course, because if you watched me play this game before, you know that I love my jumping attack and my Bloodhound's finesse. I think the one thing that I did find super helpful in this fight is that he did react to my basic attacks, so he's at least stunned for a bit while I attack, as well as his big magic slash attack being stopped with by jumping heavy, which was super helpful. I did actually end up almost dying dying in the last part of the fight because of my very horrible engages and use of my flask, which was very stupid of me. But my bleed procs did come in clutch in the end as I hit him with a barrage of attacks while he was stuck in the corner and finished him off after 4 minutes of attempting him. And after that, I head back to the Scorched Ruins Grace where I try to fight whatever the fuck this fire giant is, but proceed to get my ass handed to me after dealing pretty much no damage to him. Like at one point I had to run on my horse because this guy literally stomps the ground and generates fire around him. So not only do I do jack damage to this guy, but he's also untouchable. Nice fight, guys. As after dying to him once, I just decided to take off and explore around the first area before advancing too much elsewhere, which brought me to finding this painting in this cave, as I found others in the main game prior, but I just have no idea what significance they have to the game other than just being collectible. So yeah, I also ended up running into an NPC who was next to the Grace, a Scadutree fragment, and a Miquella cross, which is something to do with the lore that I really don't want to get into, but all I know is that they're pretty much just a guide through the DLC to let us know that we're going in the right direction. That's what I think anyway. And after touching the cross and getting a glimpse at the Miquella's mind, I head over to talk to the NPC, who reveals herself to be Freya, one of Leda's friends, as she tells us that she once fought alongside General Radahn and refers to Miquella as Miquella the Kind as well. But from what we already know from the main game, he is anything but kind. And after talking with her, I ran around for another 20 minutes just trying to search for stuff before entering the area beyond Freya. And once I made it in, I came up to a set of stairs that I completely ignored, as I managed to find a pathway to the left of them that led me to some bats that were annoying as hell and almost died to, and a completely different area, as when I opened the map to see where I was, it showed that I was elevated up compared to where I was originally, as I pretty much climbed the mountain and managed to get up here from the pathway I came from. But once I got here, I immediately got into a fight with these things, which look a lot scarier than they actually are, as I came in all pumped up with a jumping heavy and then saw how much damage it did, and they actually reacted to my attacks as I killed them in like 2 shots, which was like the most surprising thing in the world, since enemies built like this guy usually put in more of a fight and don't react to my shots at all. So I saw him and all his other friends react the same way to my attacks. It was just a relief, and they were not going to be that much of a noise to deal with. And after delving deeper into this area, I reached Prospect Town, which was essentially just a castle that I went through, as it was pretty much just filled with these same enemies but different variations, still the same difficulty but just different weapons. But all the effort to get through it ended up being a complete waste of time, since at the end of it I just got a talisman that I'm never gonna use, since all it does is raise arcane, and I don't use arcane at all in my build. So yeah, after getting done with that, I headed back to the Grace I came from near Freya, where instead of going around, I head up the stairs this time, where I find the next Grace and another one of Miquella's crosses with a Scadutree fragment next to it. I also find another NPC who introduces himself as Ansbach, who tells us that he formerly served Moog, who he killed to get here, but he doesn't know that. But he, just like all the other NPCs in this DLC, calls Miquella the Kind. But unlike everyone else, he's actually skeptical about Miquella and wants answers from him, as he tells us that he doesn't follow a new master unless he knows that he can be of use. I don't know much about the lore, so just a quick disclaimer, I'm just regurgitating everything I see in the game, so if I get stuff wrong, please let me know in the comments down below. But after talking to Ansbach, I head up these stairs and open this massive door that leads me to another set of stairs where I fight whatever the hell this is, and after running up a bunch more stairs, I finally arrive to the Bellerith Tower settlement, where I find the next Grace and the next section to explore, in which I pretty much just ran around for 20 minutes just slaughtering everything that was in my way and just finding different paths I could explore, just so I knew I wasn't missing anything, even though I still probably did. And after dying to this guy, who was the most annoying enemy in this area, and being sent back to the Grace, I just ended up going in the right direction after fighting this guy, who again was so annoying, as after taking care of him, I entered this area where I get invaded and fight another tarnished guy who, just like the last guy, was really difficult, because not only did he have one of those poke attacks that the Godskin Noble had, which I can't lie felt terrible to take since it just felt so demoralizing, but he also had his running attack, which apparently I found so impossible to dodge. Like, I actually almost managed to beat him on the second try, but of course, me being me, I got hella greedy and got killed by his running flaming sword attack, which just sucked. But I think most of all, what really pissed me off the most was this guy, because every time I died and wanted to get back to the arena, this guy would just chase me all the way there and stopped when I got far enough. So every time I tried to get past him, I had to worry about him killing me before I even got to the fight, which did actually manage to happen, believe it or not. But after a few more tries and a really unlucky jumping attack, I finally managed to beat him after a perfectly timed bleed proc that cancelled his running attack, because if that went off, I was 100% dead, since my health bar was already as low as it was. I guess being greedy sometimes pays off, I guess, but more likely than not, it fucks me in the long run. Rather being this Fire Knight bastard, I realized after walking around this area that there was literally nowhere else to go, and there was absolutely no reason whatsoever coming here in the first place, other than finding that guy, of course. So I run back up to where I came and hop onto these roof looking things to explore some more, which resulted in me getting caught by this guy when trying to sneak past him, nearly dying in the process. And after killing him for the second time, I run around for a bit where I find this ladder that takes me to another ladder, which takes me to a huge set of stairs with one of these annoying pricks on it that could have ended a lot worse than it did, which thank god it didn't. And after beating him, I run up the stairs to the next grace and open this massive door, which brings me into a cutscene. And we all know when a cutscene starts to play in this game, some shit's about to go down. Because as this cutscene played out, I watched as this massive beast got up from its slumber and roared as I come face to face with the real first boss fight in this DLC, being the divine beast dancing lion. And as soon as the fight started, I didn't even get a chance to breathe as he spews out some black smoke as I'm drinking my wondrous physic, which didn't last long because as soon as I dodged the smoke, he approached me and hit me with some bite attack along with a backflip attack, which I actually managed to dodge, believe it or not. But right after attempting to hit him with a jumping heavy, which was clearly at the wrong time, I don't know why I did it, I got hit with another bite attack along with the drop attack that he held for so long it was almost impossible to time. This attempt wouldn't last much longer. He managed to kill me after using his smoke attack once again, which was completely hidden and I had no idea it was even gonna happen. But I will say one thing before we continue about the dancing lion's design, as I just think it's so cool. As for those of you that don't know, this isn't an actual creature. It's literally a dancing lion. So there's actual people puppeteering the costume around and attacking me, which I just think is really cool. And the way FromSoft was able to animate the character around to resemble that look and actually allow us at some point to see the people under the costume is probably the coolest thing about this boss fight in my opinion. But now with the glitz out of the way, let's get back to the fight. As on my second attempt, I did manage to get him a little lower than before, but still ended up dying to the same garbage in the end with the smoke he spews out. But it wasn't until 2 attempts later that I finally managed to hit him with a pretty lucky Bloodhound's finesse that managed to stagger him, as I hit him with a critical that also luckily enough triggered a bleed proc, which did so much damage, putting him at about half HP and his second phase. Because as soon as he recovered from that critical, the guy just starts twirling around in the air and shoots some lightning around the arena. With the first attack he does is throw a whole ass lightning bolt at me, which I didn't even see coming, as it did like half my HP in one hit. I think the most annoying part about this phase is that every time he attacks, a huge wave of lightning bolts strike the area around me. So I not only have to pay attention to dodging the first attack, but also the follow-up lightning bolts that come after it. But if I'm being honest, the next few attacks that I got hit with literally had nothing to do with the lightning bolt, as I'm just dog shit at the game and can't dodge his regular attacks to save my life, as well as this guy just throwing lightning bolts at me on reaction to me drinking my flasks, which was so trash. And after using my Bloodhound's finesse at the worst time possible and nearly dying from it, he twirls in the air once more and changes his attack element from lightning to ice, as the entire arena changes to snow, and his first attack that he does is an ice slam that I managed to dodge. I do however get hit with his follow-up flurry of attacks after using the Bloodhound's finesse once again at the worst possible time. And after a few more attacks, he changes his element once again to wind this time, as every time he attacks now, a gust of wind amplifies the area. I think this element is probably the most unique one, as unlike the other two, he has completely different attacks, like this huge tornado attack that he throws and his wind kick as well. And after not dodging any of those attacks and using up all my health flasks, he changes back to ice, with us both having 1 HP, as the moment I go for a jumping heavy, he hits me with a basic attack that I really should have saw coming that kills me, putting an end to a really great run that I managed to get on my 4th or 5th try, even though I barely dodged any of his attacks. I know I'm dog shit. And right after getting him down to 1 HP and dying, my immediate thoughts were, this fight's not that bad and was kind of easy. Well, all that got thrown out the window immediately, because the moment I got in there for my literal next attempt, I died in literally 5 seconds. So this was not going to be easy. As with this fight, I literally just kept taking the worst trades possible, especially with my Bloodhound's finesse, because as you can see, anytime I was getting the entire finesse attack off, it was dealing tons of damage, and I really just wanted to get through this fight as quick as possible, especially since it would be satisfying to do it with the amount of damage I was already doing to him. But after about 20 more minutes of attempting this guy and being grabbed by this bullshit attack so many times, because my god does he hold it forever, I put an end to his divine ass for good after a fight sequence that nearly got me killed in the end, as I hit him with a jumping heavy and a final follow-up basic attack to put an end to this fight and say goodbye to the dancing lion and the dancers under there, as I have no idea why the hell they even wanted to kill me in the first place. Like, they really did all that for no reason. I know it's probably explained in the lore somewhere why. All I know is I beat these fuckers and gained their remembrance in a lot of runes, which I used immediately, as right after beating them, I headed over to the grace to level up my strength by 1 level, which was so insane to me since I literally gained 120,000 runes from that fight and only gained 1 level from it. Nice one, FromSoft. But after that, I run over to this lift and take it up to this massive door that leads me to a huge set of stairs that I run up that takes me to the front of another building that seems to be shut off by some sort of darkness or whatever the hell this is, as well as the Tower of Shadow message. And when I open it up in my inventory to read it, it says that it was left by our old companion Leda, who says that the gates of divinity lies in the tower ahead, sealed by shadow, and is where Miquella is headed. So it seems like this is going to be the final area in the game, since this is literally where Miquella is. And after reading the message and looking at the map, seeing that the grace is literally telling us to go in this direction, I head back to the Gravesite Plain, since there was a section that I didn't explore yet, as I left it until I was done here. And since I'm done with this section and there's literally nowhere else to go, I headed over to the Elec Great Bridge that took me to a completely new area that I hadn't explored yet, and instantly into the line of fire, because as soon as I got to the other end of this bridge, I was met with a bunch of enemies as well as a crossbow guy, or whatever you would call it. I did manage to dodge everything, but I was just not expecting that whatsoever. And after taking out everyone here, I brought up the next grace and touched it before leaving these for later and exploring around as I managed to find an all-out brawl between these huge guys and some regular guys that I end real quick, and a ruined forged lava intake, which in my opinion is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in this game thus far, as it's pretty much just a cave with some pretty tough enemies, I must say. But once you get here, you pull this lever that lowers this huge pipe from the ceiling that I run all the way up, where I can examine this altar that gives me an anvil hammer and an ancient dragging smithing stone, which I can't use at all since my weapon can't even use it. But before using the return to entrance teleporter, I went back down to check if there was any other places I could get to from here, and when I jumped down here, it turned out that I was actually back at the beginning of the area, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever and just blew my mind with the design. Then I seriously thought that this was a completely different area in the cave, and when I realized that it wasn't and it was just the start of the area, I just thought that design was completely genius and was so cool. But after making it back to the top and taking the TP out of here, I leave the cave and teleport back to the castle front grace, where I finally head up the stairs and enter Castle Ensis, where I get into a quick fight with this giant and explore around the castle for the next 20 minutes, which included a bunch of fighting and a lot of jump scares, which I haven't mentioned yet, but I will now, as there were so many times during this shit where you enter a room or a specific area to collect an item or something, and there's just an enemy around the corner waiting to attack you, and every time this happened, I literally got jump scared, and this happened to me so much more here than in the main game, as the only time I can ever recall this happening in the main game is in Stormville Castle, where this guy jumps around the corner and stabs us. But other than that, it never happened. But now every time I walk into a room, I'm just getting attacked out of nowhere. But yeah, I just wanted to mention this now since it happened so many times while I was navigating through this castle, and will continue to happen throughout this DLC. But now back to the game, as after fighting this beefed up knight guy, I take this lift up to the next grace and the next boss fight in the game, known as Rellana the Twin Moon Knight. And in my opinion, out of all these bosses in the DLC, this boss is definitely the second hardest in the DLC next to the final boss, as her kit was straight up just so annoying to deal with, especially because she was really fast and agile and pretty much never gave me a chance to breathe. I also hated the fact that her character model is so deceiving, since the moment I got into her fight, I thought she was going to react to all my basic attacks like every other enemy with her model, like Melania for example, as every time I hit her, she was stunned for a second and reacted to my hits. But Rellana, I guess, didn't give a shit about those, since every time I hit her, she was completely unaffected by them, which meant that this boss fight was going to be 100 times harder, which it was, as the moment I walked into the fight, she spawned in those magic daggers that she controls and threw them in my direction, and the moment I dodged them, she decided to jump towards me and attack me at the exact same time, making it literally impossible to dodge them both at the same time. Like, what? And right after that, like a dumbass, I tried to use my Bloodhound's finesse out of pure panic and ended up missing, of course, in which I managed to get hit once in the process of the move going off, which wasn't worth whatsoever. But after a little bit more fighting, I did manage to stagger her after using a bunch of jumping heavies and my Bloodhound's finesse, as well as making her bleed right afterward, which dealt a lot of damage. But not even that was enough to keep the run alive, as right after that bleed happened, she pulled out a huge ass sword from out of nowhere and just slammed it down on my head top and whipped it around, killing me and put an end to my first run of this fight, which honestly went a lot better than I thought it was gonna go, providing the fact that I literally got hit by every single attack she threw at me, as my second attempt went just as bad. Honestly, even worse. I didn't even make it to halfway on her health, since I ended up dying like the first 10 seconds of the fight. But it wasn't until I got to my fourth attempt that I make it to her second phase, and my god, is that a horror show, because now instead of using two regular magic swords to attack me, she transforms one sword into a flaming sword and the other into a glowing version of the sword she already had. And the first thing she decides to hit me with is a barrage of magic sword slashes in rapid succession, which were pretty difficult to dodge the first time around, as I was not expecting her to throw them at the speed that she did and at the amount she threw. As right after that, I actually did manage to get a jumping heavy in, as well as dodging both of her fire explosion attacks, in which she then overpowers me with like 50 of her phantom swords that she throws at me all at once, and then kills me when I start to panic roll and get hit by her follow-up slashes, which just suck. But now that I've gotten to her second phase and seen all the moves she has up her sleeve, just kidding, because literally on my very next attempt, she decides to show off her fire form in her second phase, as she uses her fire sword to its maximum capabilities and just causes a huge explosion of fire around her, with the most unluckiest timing ever being me drinking my flask and just getting destroyed by a lava fountain that spawned out of the ground exactly where I was standing. Like, what are the odds? But after dying in this attempt, it was pretty much trial and error from this point, because this was the hardest boss yet that I've encountered in this DLC, as I pretty much had to fight Rellana like I did Melania, where I don't use any of my Bloodhound's finesses, it's so unreliable, but every time I I dodge, I use my basic attack or jumping heavy if it's free, so I can build my bleed procs and stagger as well. But since her poise is super high, relying on staggering her will not be the best course of action. I really just have to take hit and not get hit super seriously in this fight if I was gonna beat her, because if I ever got hit by any attack or even a combo, it was lights out for me. And trust me, that was not an easy task in the slightest, as this literally went on and on and on and on until 1 hour into fighting her, she decided to pull out a new move that I had never seen before. When I got her down to a quarter HP, the lowest I had gotten her at this point, as she went up into the air, spawned in like 2 moons and just smashed them both into the ground and finishing me off with her own ground smash. Like, I literally have no words. But I think out of all my attempts, the most unlucky I've ever gotten was right here, where I managed to get a bleed proc off that got her down to pretty much 1 HP and ended up dying because I got greedy and attacked at the wrong time, which I can't lie was so infuriating when it happened, because it would have saved me hours of my life that I spent on this boss, as after 2.5 hours of continuously dying to her, I finally managed to beat her after dodging a flurry of the most stressful attacks ever, because for some reason I just didn't want to heal up and actually managed to dodge everything for once, and many well-placed jumping heavies along the way, as I end the fight off with a final Bloodhound's finesse that staggered her and finally defeat Rellana with basic attacks, because she didn't deserve to fall to my critical, which I was actually annoyed that I didn't do, as I get a remembrance and 240,000 runes to go along with it, which I used right away at the grace to level up. But now that Rellana is taken care of, I leave the castle and enter the next area known as the Shadow Atlas, where I instantly ping the next map location on the map and touch the next grace where I find both Leda and Ansbach next to it. And after catching up with them, I head down this trail where I have a little fight with this horse fucker and then head over to the map location that I pinged earlier to reveal the rest of the area on the map so I can see where the hell I'm going, as I then instantly get into a fight with the dynamic trio over here and get absolutely massacred. But I get my revenge right away when I respawn, and before I even thought about how the hell I was gonna maneuver my way past this guy, I explored around, died, and came to the Church of Crusade, where I get invaded by this guy and get one more Scadutree fragment for good luck. And after being killed immediately after collecting that fragment, I make my way into the village, where I right away get rocks kicked in my face by this bastard giant, but managed to get around him unharmed otherwise, and onto this lift that took me straight into the Shadow Keep and into the next boss fight of the game, being the Golden Hippopotamus, which isn't a remembrance boss but is required to proceed to this game, as the moment I walk into the fight, I get jumped on immediately and get bitten right away that dealt a quarter of my HP off rip. I do manage to dodge his next few attacks pretty easily until I reach the attack that's gonna be a real nightmare to deal with for the rest of the fight's duration, and that's his grab attack, as he literally holds the attack forever and deals a ton of damage to me when it goes off. But after that, I heal up and then proceed to get hit with back-to-back attacks that end up getting me killed in the end, which was fine since it's always next attempt, as the moment I get into my second try, I didn't get hit with the dashing bite that he did originally, as from now on he will be exclusively using his grab attack at the beginning of the attempt in all attempts moving forward, which I immediately get hit by since I'm apparently unable to time it. I did actually manage to find a way to dodge it, as a couple of attempts later I just ran backwards slowly and dodged to the left at the last second to dodge it. Obviously it wasn't easy to pull up 100% of the time, but it was definitely better than whatever the hell I was doing before. But this also was the attempt where I get to a second phase, which is pretty much like his first, except this time around he grows quills on his back and shoots down a bunch of spikes from the sky along with most of his attacks, which is pretty annoying to deal with, and also can roll around like an idiot from time to time. But overall, this boss wasn't too bad, as his worst attack by far has to be his grab, which even though I figured out how to dodge, I still ended up being hit by it pretty consistently. But overall, this fight wasn't that bad, as I managed to beat him in about 20 minutes with a bunch of well-timed Bloodhound finesses and jumping heavies that staggered him in the fight, as I finished him off with a massive bleed proc and the final hit to put this fight to an end, and the Golden Hippopotamus down for good, getting his thorns and 2 Scadutree fragments for defeating him, as well as 200,000 runes as well. And after leveling up my Scadutree blessing and my stats, I head on forward to the Shadow Keep, where I pretty much just fight a bunch of enemies as I make my way over to this lift and enter a pretty interesting area known as the Specimen storehouse, as this place has got so much shit in it. I still don't think I found everything. I think the coolest thing about this place has to be being able to run up the statue on the ceiling that leads to the next grace, because originally I didn't think this was the right path to go and didn't actually think I could climb it, as I literally just thought I would fall down if I tried. But eventually I gave in and jumped on it, and surprisingly it actually led me to the next grace, so yeah, that was fun. But after that, for some reason I thought I was Superman and just decided to try to go for this item by jumping for it, but I ended up just suiciding for no reason and lost 100,000 runes, so that was not fun. But after that, I run up all these stairs, fight a bunch of these red hooded fuckers, and find the next grace on the next level of the storehouse, as well as Freya again, as I do a little back and forth between her and Ansbach, as I managed to find them before, I just didn't mention it until they both completely disappear and I'm back on my own again. What a great way to live, guys. But right after that, I managed to find a lever that brought the hanging statue even higher, along with a walkway that I could cross on to climb the statue once again. That brought me out of the storehouse and onto one of these fire knights again, who are really tough to beat be, by the way, as after beating the knight, I opened this massive door, bringing me to another set of stairs that led me to another door in a grace that I rest and level up at before opening the door and entering the cutscene of the next major boss fight in this game, as we watch as he gets up from his throne, lights a flame in his hand, and introduces himself as Messmer the Impaler, which takes me straight into the fight. But the first thing he does is straight up fly into the air, drop straight down towards me that I managed to dodge surprisingly, but I didn't expect him to explode right afterwards and take up half my HP, which was the real surprise. And this attempt doesn't last much longer than that, because right after getting blown up, I go for a jumping heavy that kills me as he stabs me with his flaming spear along with a follow-up slash attack that deals the finishing blow. My second attempt does go a bit better though, as I managed to dodge a lot of his attacks as well as dealing a big chunk of damage to him. I ended up dying after he decided to spin around and do a bunch of shit with his spear that I didn't even see coming. After about 10 more minutes of attempting this fight, I actually managed to stagger him and hit him with a critical, which shocked me because I was trying to get him to stagger for the longest time and he wouldn't budge at all. So getting that was a real surprise to me. And right after he got up, I managed to hit him a couple more times and then get a jumping heavy, which triggered a massive bleed proc as well as his second phase cutscene as he turns to look at the statue of his mother and proceeds to tear one of his own eyes out and destroys it right in front of us, as his serpent form is now released as we now fight base serpent Messmer, as he's now able to take the form of a giant serpent to attack us now, along with his regular attacks from his first phase. Now I will say that this phase is a lot more manageable to me than the first phase is, since his serpent attacks are a lot easier to dodge than his normal form, as I actually almost managed to beat him on the first try on the second phase, as the one thing that managed to kill me was his grab attack, and in my opinion his grab attack is definitely the coolest grab move I have ever seen in this entire game, and that's including the main game as well. As in my last video I said Malenia's grab was the coolest, but Messmer's just takes the cake, as with the combo of the animation and the devastating sound effect, it makes for such a great attack. But the part that I don't like is that it pretty much one-shots you. Now I actually did manage to survive this attack in this instant, but I was an idiot and tried to heal right away, as the moment I tried that he instantly just stabbed me in the back and killed me, which I was just kind of annoyed at, since I definitely would have been able to kill him here if I wasn't an idiot. But this also is where I realized that this fight wasn't going to be that bad, as his second phase seems to be pretty manageable. The only thing I had to deal with now is actually getting back to his second phase, which the first phase doesn't make easy whatsoever, as in my very next attempt I only lasted like 10 seconds into the fight before I died again, so this was gonna be a hell of a challenge. I did however manage to get to the second phase after 5 minutes of dying, only to be killed in like 2 seconds because apparently I couldn't dodge his opening attack that I knew he was gonna do and had no problem doing the first time around, yet apparently I just couldn't time the smash or the explosion, which I didn't think would one-shot me. And after that it was just death after death after death, until finally 4 minutes later I managed to get back to his second phase, where I pretty much got hit by every single attack they threw at me, yet still surviving somehow, as I don't know if I'm just hella lucky or just an idiot, because literally this guy hit me with the same moves back to back and I still never dodged them properly. But I did manage to stagger him for the first time in this phase, which I didn't manage to get a critical from since I was still casting my Bloodhound's finesse, as right after that I managed to dodge his next upcoming attacks that led to a jumping heavy and getting the final 2 shots in to put an end to this fight, as after 30 minutes I managed to finally defeat Messmer as he falls to my blade and reveals that his mother is actually Marika, which I did see coming because I already knew, but was really interesting as this guy just came out of nowhere and automatically just became a really important character in this lore. That's all you're getting from a lore standpoint from me, because I know jack shit about this game's lore. As right after defeating Messmer, we get his remembrance as well as his kindling, along with a whopping 400,000 runes, which I used instantly to level up my stats. And after that I head back to the Specimen storehouse, where I try to find a way to the next area, since I was literally lost for a good 10 minutes of where to go, as I find this lift that takes me down to this basement of hell, where I find these disgusting looking creatures that I don't even know what the hell they are, as pretty much I just fought my way out of here to the next grace that leads me to this door out of the Shadow Keep, as I can finally ride Torrent again to another one of these fire knights that I damn near died to once again, and up this lift which takes me to the next grace and the next area in the game known as the Ancient Ruins of Ra, that looks completely different compared to all the other areas I've explored, because I swear to god this is the first time I've ever seen green trees in this game. And just so I'm not wasting you guys' time, I legit ran around and fought a bunch of different enemies for about 35 to 40 minutes until I found the structure with the most annoying enemies in the game, with a lift that takes me to a grace and the next boss fight in the game being Romina, Saint of the Bud, who surprisingly I was actually able to beat on my second try due to me being able to land a significant amount of jumping heavies for free, as well as being able to stagger her twice in the fight due to being able to land a bunch of Bloodhound finesses too. But the ending of the fight was a little sketchy, as I actually got pretty low in health along with running out of all my health flasks as well, but luckily at this point I was already well aware of her moveset and was able to properly dodge most of them, as I managed to end the fight by drinking my mana flask and finishing her off with one more Bloodhound's finesse, as I dodged the second half of her attack with the finesse to end the fight and defeat the Saint of the Bud just like that. I'm not too sure if this fight fight is supposed to be really hard or something, but it wasn't that bad. Just a little stressful near the end since it would have been cool to beat her on the second try, which I did. And I can confirm that I didn't feel remotely different after the fact, so there you go. But with defeating her, I collect a remembrance, touch the grace, and move on forward to the ceiling tree as the game gives me the option to burn it, in which I say yes, and a cutscene starts playing as we just light the tree of flame, which directly causes the darkness to be removed from the massive castle before us. And if you guys forgot where that was, it was that place I found before after defeating the dancing lion earlier on in the game that was covered in literal darkness. But now that it's set free, I can now enter the final area in the game known as Enir-Ilim, in which I immediately see this guy running down the stairs at me, and my immediate reaction is to run in the opposite direction because I did not want to deal with that guy off rip. When I realized that there was literally nowhere else to run and he had actually made it down the stairs, I had to fight him, as I ended up beating him with it costing me 4 of my flasks, which sure was worth it since I didn't have to see this guy again, but at the same time it wasn't, since I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, as it's a completely new area and he'll spawn again if I die. But luckily, as soon as I ran up the stairs, the next grace was waiting for me right here, and I instantly rested at it. And after that, I explored around the area for a bit, which of course included a lot of massacre. This is where I met probably the single hardest basic enemy, as the moment I walked up to this fucker, he roared out and the entire area just got shot with lightning, similar to what the dancing lion does, as he then proceeded to shoot lightning in my face and instantly knocked me up, killing me instantly, which was so annoying since I had to run past all these enemies again, take damage like an idiot just to get back to him, in which I actually managed to kill him this time, but I was not expecting him to be as hard as he was, as he was essentially just a harder version of the guy I fought on the stairs earlier. And after beating him, I run up the stairs where I find another pretty annoying enemy who I managed to kill. And after running away from this guy, I ignore literally everything in my path as I make it over to this massive door that my guy literally just takes his sweet ass time to open, and touch the grace before this fucker attacks me, because apparently he wanted to chase me all the way up here like the little rat he is. But I rest instantly so he doesn't even have a chance to attack me, and level up real quick using the golden runes that I had left. And after that, I run up these stairs that led me to a dead end, as apparently the stairs just decided to stop out of nowhere. And using the game's logic, I jumped out of this window to get onto the roofs, where I run into a bunch of these birds that are hella annoying to deal with. But what's even worse is that after I get past all of that, I run into, you guessed it, that same fucker from a few seconds ago, but this time on the roof, so it's gonna be twice as hard to fight him, and he's using his ice form off rip, because I didn't even get close to him, and all he had to do was stomp the fucking ground and one-shot me with his ground ice attack, which was so annoying, because now I had to deal with all the birds again, which was just such a pain. And after fighting him 2 more times and absolutely failing, I just decided to skip him and run the fuck away from him, because I was not trying to deal with this guy in his ice form, because it was just impossible to fight, especially on the roof, mind you. And once I got past him, I managed to make it up the second set of stairs from inside the building where some of the stairs were missing from before, and up another set of stairs that led me into another one of these fuckers again. Where the hell are they all coming from? This time he's using wind. It's like these 3 were the ones controlling the dancing lion at the beginning of the game, and once I killed them, they all got free. Like, what the hell is going on? But long story short, I tried to run away, but ended up getting absolutely slaughtered, so once again I have to make that entire run back up here, which wasn't fun in the slightest. This time around, I actually managed to escape with my life, still nearly dying, but ended up making it to the next grace, as thankfully I do not have to deal with any of those guys again, because they're just a pain in the ass to deal with. And just to mention this, since I haven't spoken about this at all throughout this video, but at this point I have my Scadutree blessing at level 10, which at this point isn't ideal, as I definitely should have had a higher blessing level at this point, especially during the end game. But after leveling up, I walk up these stairs to a pretty huge room where I find my girl Needle Knight Leda. This time though, it doesn't seem like we're on the same side, as at this point she's figured out that we weren't actually led to the realm of shadow by Mikola, but actually by the Erdtree, as she pretty much just tells us to go fuck ourselves and says that if we want to face Mikola, we're gonna have to go through her first, in which she disappears and 2 summoning symbols appear on the ground. One ally one in which we can summon Ansbach, and the other in which we can fight Leda and her allies. And of course, this being our summonless run, I don't summon Ansbach at all and get straight into the fight with Leda by myself. As soon as I hop into the arena, Redmane Freya spawns in as the fight begins. And this is pretty much just another Tarnished invasion fight, with the only difference being that she's a hell of a lot stronger than any of the other Tarnished I've fought before. And oh yeah, she gets to spawn in her other pals as well, while we're still fighting, of course. So it's pretty much literally me against all of Leda's allies at once, which was going to be a bitch. Because as you've been seeing throughout this playthrough, I literally struggle with one enemy as it is. But if I'm going to be facing 5 different enemies at once, it is not going to be a good time. And a good time it was not, as the moment she summoned in the horn scent, I got killed instantly, and you right away, this was not going to be fun. I think only after 15 minutes of fighting this boss did I manage to kill Freya, but when that happened, I wasn't able to take out the horn scent fast fast enough so both Dryleaf Dane and Leda spawned at the same time, but I ended up dying before anything even happened, as I literally had the Hornsent at 1 HP before being killed, and that's the furthest that I actually got at that point, as every other attempt after this, I just kept dying to the Hornsent every single time. It was pretty annoying, and that's when I finally gave in, as my friend that has played this game before informed me that this fight was actually balanced around using the summon, and that he has only ever done this without summons once, and that he never ever wanted to do it again. And after hearing that and gaslighting myself to think that it wasn't a real boss fight and that it was just in the way of the final boss, I finally used my first summon ever, being Ansbach, and went into the arena to fight this battle how it was created to be fought. Because if Leda's using summons, I should be able to use them too, because that's just fucking cheating. But the one thing I will say is that this summon was very different to any other summon in this game, as Ansbach doesn't get summoned right away, as I actually have to survive for a certain amount of time before he summons in. So if I'm in trouble with Freya right off the bat, he won't be there to save my ass. But the one good thing about it is that he pretty much spawns in a little after the Hornsent spawn, so I just have to survive long enough for him to spawn in and I should be fine. Right? Well, either I'm horrible at the game or this fight is just really hard, because even with the help of Ansbach, I was still having a hard time, as on my first attempt with Ansbach, I managed to get rid of Freya right away and the Hornsent with Ansbach, but the moment Dryleaf Dane and Leda spawned in, I started having serious issues and pretty much just threw the fight, as we literally had the Dane killed. But for some reason, I just let him heal up because I thought I could just trust Ansbach to kill him as I take care of Leda, but apparently not, as once I got into a 1v1 with the Dryleaf Dane is when it was GG, because I did manage to get him down to half HP, but I just kept getting greedy with my jumping heavies and ended up taking some serious damage to the stupidest things, and even ended up dying because of it. But even after that attempt, it just kept getting worse and worse, as I literally just kept dying before Ansbach could even make it to the fight in the first place, as the Hornsent in specific just did so much damage. It was kind of insane, and after dying to those fuckers 5 times in a row, I just decided to run away the moment the Hornsent spawned in to stall time for Ansbach, because clearly I couldn't handle them by myself, let alone the Hornsent. So once Ansbach spawned in, he managed to take Freya off me as I fought the Hornsent on my own, which of course was an absolute struggle. It was such a struggle, in fact, that I literally wasn't done with him by the time the Dryleaf Dane spawned in. And the moment I saw that shit pop up on my screen is when I rushed this fucker down and killed him, and then ran my ass over to Ansbach to finish off Freya, before both of us ganged up on the Dane to kill him, as he literally couldn't do anything at all since he was just being permanently attacked the entire time, which meant that he couldn't attack us at all. And the moment he died, I knew it was over, because all we had left to deal with was Leda, and judging off of what just happened to the Dane, I don't think Leda stands a chance, as we literally did the exact same shit to her. She couldn't attack us at all, as I get the final slash in to end the fight and lay Needle Knight Leda and the rest of her comrades to rest, never to see Miquella or the end of this battle, as I get Leda's sword after defeating her and everyone else's armor and weapons on my way out. But now that the Guardians of Ola are taken care of, it is now time to end this and finally face the man that Leda was protecting and who we've been searching for the entire time, as I make my way up these stairs and up to the final lift in the Elden Ring DLC, where I find Ansbach again and talk to him, as he lets us know that he knows that we killed Mo and that he has zero quarrel with us and wishes us luck in our final battle, and says that we will have our victory, which is exactly what will happen as I make my way up these stairs and touch the final grace and level up. Before I enter the boss arena, the cutscene starts playing as we see a very familiar face, as it's revealed that the final boss in the Elden Ring DLC is General Radahn, who we defeated back in the main game but is brought back to life in its prime form through a vessel made from the body of Mo, with Miquella's plan being that he wants to become a god and mind control everyone to love him, with Radahn being to him what we are to Ranni, his consort, as we are now placed into the final boss of the game against promised consort Radahn. With us getting straight into the action, as the moment the fight starts, he flies straight into me as I dodged her off rip, but this attempt did not last long at all, as I ended up getting killed in the next 10 seconds, as apparently I can't dodge his attacks for shit, and just ended up getting hit by every single attack that he threw at me, and lost 150,000 moves that I didn't even know I had in the process just like that, so that was fun. But now with the first attempt out of the way, it was pretty much time to grind this shit out and learn all of his moves so I could beat him, which wasn't going to be an easy task at all, because most of his attacks in my opinion are pretty telegraphed and the fight overall does have a good rhythm to it. But the attacks in the first phase that absolutely pissed me off the most were his pull-in and this attack that he held forever and gets a double hit on me with. The reason why both of these pissed me off is because he already has an attack which he uses right away to fly to my position, which also looks the same as his pull-in, as he uses his purple electricity within both attacks, and every time he used that, attack, I was caught so off guard because I thought he was going to use his flying instead, when in reality he just pulls us in, which pretty much is undodgeable if you get hit by it, since these spikes start spawning in around him and I have no idea how to constantly dodge those after the fact, because I guess I just got lucky every time I dodged within them and didn't take damage. And this double whammy attack can speak for itself, as he holds it for 10 years and I can't time attacks like that properly since I'm so stupid. Now don't get me wrong, even though those two attacks are the ones that gave me the most trouble, doesn't mean the first phase is easy in the slightest, because it literally took me about 30 minutes into fighting him for me to actually get to a second phase, because it took me a while to learn all his moves and stop always spamming my jumping heavy, as he attacks pretty quick, and if I use any attack while he's using one of his fast attacks, I'm not going to be able to dodge anything while he's doing it. So the strategy was that I was only ever going to use jumping heavies if the opportunity was there, and that went the same for my Bloodhound's finesse, and you guys know how much I love using that move. And pretty much I had to fight Radahn like I did Malenia, as anytime I have the chance to attack, I only use my basic attack. That's it, since as I said before, using any heavy attack in this fight is almost impossible to do unless he's already using a heavy himself. And honestly, jumping heavies weren't even worth it in the long run, since a double basic attack does like double the damage a single jumping heavy does, while also building up a bleed proc. Whereas the only good thing about the jumping heavies in this scenario is that you can break his stance quicker, but relying on that in this fight is not worth taking free damage over. But even though I explained the entire strategy here, I didn't use this strategy until way later in my attempts at this fight, as 30 minutes into fighting him, I ended up getting to a second phase while just literally spamming my jumping heavy and Bloodhound's finesse that actually managed to stagger him for a critical that took me right into a second phase, as this, ladies and gentlemen, is where all hell breaks loose, as within the phase 2 cutscene, we watch as Radahn gets absolutely fired up before Miquella walks in from the gates of divinity and flies onto Radahn's shoulders, as we finally see our first glimpse of Miquella, the one we came to stop, as we now get into a fight with the Miquella powered Radahn. And as soon as the second phase starts, I start running away instantly, because I've seen this fight before and I know to start running away, because the moment the cutscene ends, Radahn starts floating up into the air, setting up for a massive explosion that I managed to escape from, as it proceeds to set off the massive explosion right in front of me. And once it's over, he takes a cheap shot and shoots some light rays at me that were way too fast for me to dodge, and then flies into me and instantly grabs me, in which Miquella promises me
1,000-year voyage guided by compassion.
So if you guys want to know what just happened, since I clearly didn't, he pretty much sets a debuff on me indicated by the mark on my head, and what that does is that the next time Radahn manages to grab me, it causes an instant death, so I cannot get grabbed twice in the same fight or it's over. I will say that I did a pretty good job in dodging this attack, since it's pretty well telegraphed and one of his easier moves to dodge, probably one of the easier grabs to dodge in the entire game. But holy hell is everything so much more harder to dodge, because right after he throws me down after the grab, he goes back to using his normal attacks from the first phase, only with a little twist, as from now on, every time he swings his swords at me, it creates an explosion in the area that the swords were swung, which obviously made things a lot more harder, because now not only did I have to worry about dodging all of his attacks, which I'm already shit at, I also have to focus on where I'm actually dodging, because if I dodge in the wrong direction and get hit with every single explosion he throws at me, I'm 100% being killed. But this attempt comes to an end pretty quickly after he decided to do whatever the fuck this was and killed me, sending me back all the way to the first phase, where I have to do that shit all over again. And since I talked about the most annoying attacks of the first phase, let's go over the second phase, shall we? As he gains a lot of new attacks in this phase that I've already gone over, like his grab and his explosion as soon as the phase starts. But the one attack that really had me struggling the most in this entire phase was his meteor shower, as this attack is also used in the first phase of the fight, but it's a lot easier, as all you have to do is dodge the meteors. But that all changes in the second phase, because when he does his initial meteor attack, it's literally the same exact attack, but the follow-up is much different, because as soon as that shit ends, he comes raining down from the sky with back-to-back attacks, which confused the hell out of me, because you don't actually have to dodge each one. You actually just have to dodge the last one, as the first few are actually just phantom attacks, as he then finishes off with a huge explosion from the ground. And this attack did take me a while to figure out and actually dodge correctly, as the strategy behind this is to actually run away from the initial meteors and then make a sharp left turn to dodge them, since if you use your dodge to the side, you'll end up getting caught by the follow-up completely. And the strategy behind dodging said follow-up is to run away from the 4 phantom attacks and then dodge the 5th, since that's the one that'll deal the most to you, and then just dodge the explosion, which isn't that hard. Of course, I wasn't probably able to dodge it in the clip that you're probably seeing right now, because this was just such an annoying attack. It literally took me a couple days to figure out how to dodge it correctly. Since it was that difficult, I literally looked up a guide on how to dodge it, because I just couldn't figure it out by myself. But when I saw how it was done, I realized that it wasn't that bad, and I'm just horrible at the game. And just because I mentioned this attack, I might as well mention the next attack, which is in the same category, as he literally does the same attack, just minus minus the initial meteors, as this one was actually a lot harder for me to dodge since he did it spontaneously and many times I just wasn't ready for it to happen, as the strategy is pretty much the same, as instead of running back, you run to the right and dodge the final attack, which of course this time around also includes explosions, so that was fun to deal with. There is one other attack that I wanted to go over, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about it since it's pretty much bullshit, as it's literally just a flashbang and you just have to know when to dodge at what time to be able to survive the attack, and if you don't, it's pretty much an insta kill. But at the same time, that's literally all of his attacks in this fight, so I'm just gonna say right now, Radahn's fight is absolute fucking bullshit. But now that I've gone over every single garbage attack in this fight, there's really nothing much else to say, as all I have to do now is grind my fucking ass off to beat this fight, and this is what I did for 2 days straight. Yeah, you heard that right. I grinded this fight for a full 2 days just so I could try to beat the fight, with most of the attempts that I lost to was either in the first phase or like 30 seconds into the second phase. It was an absolute joke. Now, I would say that this fight was harder than Malenia's, but just comparing both of their attacks to one another, I think Malenia still takes the cake, since that fight was a lot more technical than this one was, but for some reason I just had a harder time with this one than Malenia, as I just couldn't get a hang of his attacks in the second phase, especially his phantom attack, as well as his explosions when he throws his swords, as those things were probably what killed me the most in all my attempts. But after spending 2 full days on this fight, I walked into my final attempt where I finally managed to do it, and words really can't describe what was going on in this attempt, so I'm just going to show you what happened. Enjoy. Yes, sir! Let's go! Oh. Oh my god. And after 13 hours, 17 minutes, and 20 seconds of fighting, I finally managed to defeat promised consort Radahn in one of the most bullshit boss fights I've ever experienced in this game, as I finally put Radahn back into the ground where he belongs and stopped Miquella from ever becoming a god and his plans altogether, as I get the remembrance of a god and a lord for defeating them and 500,000 runes as well. But before I use them at the grace, I walk over to this floating orb, as the game gives me the option to touch the memory, and when I do, a cutscene plays out where we see Miquella on the floor telling Radahn, who he refers to as Lord Brother, that his plan is to become a god and make the world a better place, but asks Radahn to promise him that he'll be Miquella's consort, which brings us to the end of the cutscene and the end of the Elden Ring DLC, from a story standpoint anyway, as defeating Radahn is the end of the story of the game for now, but not from a remembrance standpoint, as with Radahn's, I've only collected 5 out of the 10 remaining remembrances in this DLC, plus another boss that I'm mention in a sec. But before we get any further in this video, I just want to say thank you all for watching the video so far, and if you made it this far into the video, comment remembrance in the comments below so I know you're here, and I'll respond to your comment because I really appreciate you. Also, if you're not, make sure to subscribe and like because I'm almost at 20k subs right now, and I'd really appreciate it if you got me there. But now let's get back into the video with the first remembrance boss I'm going to be taking care of is the Putrescent Knight. And for those remembrance bosses, I'm not going to go over into how I got to each one because at that point I'll just be making a long ass video for no reason. So I'm just going to stick to the boss fights and go over them briefly. But what I will say is I did find this boss fight in a pretty cool way, as you literally just take a leap of faith down here with a long ass drop before reaching the ground and get put straight into the fight as he comes riding in on his horse, which is one of the cooler parts about this fight because unlike every other horse boss in this game, the horse actually has a part to play in this fight. Since the very first attack he throws on me is that when he gets off his horse, he does a spin move for me to dodge, and then his horse just comes out of the water and runs straight at me, which I just thought was such a cool mechanic for a boss to have since I hadn't seen it in any other horse boss in this game. I think the most annoying attacks in this fight was definitely the attacks that he held forever, like this one, where there's a really confusing rhythm with how he slams down his weapon with both hands, which I found pretty annoying and got hit by a majority of the time in this fight, along with an attack that he does in the second phase that I didn't even know you could jump over until after I beat him. But his fire attacks, which to me was so impossible to dodge since he does one that takes up the entirety of the ground around me, and one really fast one in a narrow line that surprised me every time he did it, which I barely dodged. Other than that, every other attack was just a learning curve that I had to get over, which of course took me a while, as it took me a total of 30 minutes for me to beat him. But I'm gonna say either this is a boss specific thing or just me being absolutely unlucky, but in both of my final attempts of this fight, I literally got him down to 1 HP. Like, look at the bar. He's literally dead, but somehow both times back to back, I managed to get him on this exact HP, which got me killed in my second last attempt, with my final attempt not being as bad, as I managed to kill him here, but boy was I pissed when it happened to me the first time. Let me know in the comments down below if that just happens or I was just unlucky. But overall, this boss fight wasn't too bad, and honestly one of the more unenjoyable boss fights that I've fought so far, as I get his remembrance for killing him and 220,000 runes as well. And just as an added bonus, after defeating the knight, I went into this little cave where I find Saint Trina, and I can get her blossom here, as I don't know too much about her lore and everything, but according to my friend that I asked about this stuff to, she is apparently the second half of Mikola, and when I killed Mikola, she was killed as well, which is why I can collect her blossom now. But if I had come here before fighting Radahn, I would have been able to talk to her, but it's too late now, she's dead. And after touching the grace and spending the runes, I move on to the next boss fight in the game, being Bayle the Dread, as this is technically not a remembrance boss, as he doesn't give us a remembrance for beating him, but he does give us an equivalent of a remembrance being his heart. But this fight is very unique, as I don't actually use my Bloodhound's Fang for this, as in my first attempt I ended up dying pretty quick, and it was pretty hard to use this weapon at all in this fight, as yet again from advice from my friend, he suggested that I use the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana to fight Bayle, as it's much easier to use against him than my Fang. So I went over to the round table hold that I don't think I've ever mentioned once in this video, maxed it out, and went back into the fight where I instantly noticed the damage difference, with each basic attack doing around 1300 damage each hit versus the 600 the Fang was doing. It was also a lot easier to hit his face as well, which was great since that was where the most damage was going to be dealt. But even with the katana, this boss fight was still super difficult to beat, in specific his second phase, as the first just goes on like any other dragon boss fight with the fire and the head movements and him flying away of course. But once the second phase starts, all hell breaks loose, as he immediately goes Super Saiyan and absolutely explodes lava from the ground while also having lightning fire around him, which he flies up and around the arena while spawning in fireballs behind him that shoot directly on my location. That took me a bit to get used to, but eventually I ended up being able to dodge him pretty easily. And pretty much from here on out, once he hits the floor, it's just a bunch of AoE attacks involving either his fire or huge lightning strikes from the sky. Pretty annoying to deal with, since I for one absolutely hate AoE attacks in this game. But the absolute worst attack in this fight by far is this one right here, as he goes back up to the sky and shoots fire across the arena horizontally and then comes straight at me with a super wide fire spread that I managed to dodge, but ended up getting hit by the follow-up explosion right afterward. For some reason I just couldn't understand how to dodge this attack, as every time I did, I ended up either dying to the first fire spread or the explosion right afterwards. It was so frustrating, and at a certain point I just totally forgot that I dodged the initial fire on my first attempt, since I literally kept dodging at the wrong time and died to the first fire every single time. But I did eventually realize that the fire was dodgeable and the attack wasn't that bad, but it took me a long time to figure that out, as this fight alone took me around an hour and a half to beat, mainly because I just kept being an idiot and forgetting what moves did what, especially his face attack, but also me getting greedy a lot with me thinking I'm in a safe spot when in reality I'm gonna get hit by his fire. It was really dumb, but I did eventually end up defeating him in the end, as in my opinion he definitely is one of the cooler bosses in the game, especially when he flies above the arena. That was pretty cool. And of course, as I mentioned before, when I beat him, he gives me his heart along with 490,000 runes, as it seems like everyone in this game except for Radahn is allergic to that 10,000 extra runes. But the next boss up in the plate is Midra, Lord of the Frenzied Flame, and this guy was a hassle to get to, as after after beating Bayle, the journey to the next boss fight took me about an hour to get to, as the first thing I had to get to was actually get to the location on the map that I hadn't found yet. That required me to head back to the Shadow Keep, where I found a secret ladder that led me to another secret ladder, which I found, you guessed it, a secret exit that led to a secret coffin. Yeah, there's a lot of secret things to find this boss. And once I get in, a cutscene plays where I fall down this huge waterfall that brought me back to the Shadow Atlas, but the lower part that I couldn't get to before. And I pretty much just rode through it before finding these platforms to go down even further into the Atlas that brought me to the Dark Light Catacombs, which took me about 10 minutes to get through before finding the boss arena that could have given me a lot more issues than it actually did, as I did end up dying a few times as this boss summons other enemies to attack me. But I ended up just rushing him to kill him before he could even summon anything to begin with, and ended up killing him on that attempt, thank god. But I think the coolest thing about this fight arena is that it was pretty much just a ruins out in the open somewhere, as when the exits finally opened, it led me straight outside to the next grace and the area known as the Abyssal Woods. And if you're asking why I'm not on torrent, it's because apparently he's just a pussy and can't ride through this area. But right away I find this grace and the map of the area, so I know where I'm going. It was actually the final map that I had to find to complete the full map of the DLC, which by the way was the real reason why I went for all the remembrances, because it just didn't feel right for me to beat the game and not get all the maps. So I'm happy now. And after that I managed to find the next grace in the area that led me to probably the most unique section in this entire game, as the game goes from Elden Ring to Splinter Cell real quick, as it turns into a stealth section because of this enemy right here, because this enemy is completely invulnerable to attacks unless you parry him, which I didn't know at the time and probably wouldn't have tried anyways. But essentially if they spot you, your madness bar increases, and if it gets to max you get hit with the madness proc that isn't an insta death but still a lot of damage. But what does melt your health bar is them getting point blank on you and using their grab attack, which literally sucks the life out of you. But me being a Batman Arkham player, I'm an expert at stealth sections, since that game is literally all about stealth. But it doesn't help when there's surprise plants in the bushes that when you hit them notifies the fuckers and pretty much gets you killed, because also they can just teleport to your location in like a second, so there's no escape even if you get caught. I did manage to get past this first guy on my second try, but this then leads me into another section where there's two guys instead of one, and I was doing pretty good until this guy decided to jerk his body in my direction as if he saw me when it clearly was hiding in the bush. Like, come on man. But after my second try I managed to get past them and find the next grace and found my way to Midra's manse. And before we talk about this shit show, I really just wanted to say I wish the game utilized mechanics like those madness guys more throughout the game, because as far as I can tell that's the first and only time that we've ever gotten a stealth section like this in this game ever. I really liked it a lot because it was different and out of the ordinary, and I wish there was more unique mechanics like that used more in this game, because it was a really good change of pace and a really cool section overall. But now let's talk about the shit show known as Midra's manse, as it's literally just a full-scale version of Abu's mansion from a Mario game, because it's riddled with secret exits left, right, and center, and just A's everywhere, also known as this guy. But I do manage to get to the end where I finally get to the boss arena where I beat up this little guy after he infected me with his madness after trying to let him talk. And after killing him, a cutscene started to play out where he literally just rips his own head off to reveal his true form known as Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and also somehow managed to make himself taller. Yeah, I don't know how all that works, but overall this boss fight wasn't that bad, as it was just a lot of AoE attacks and highly telegraphed regular attacks that were pretty easy to dodge. He also did take a lot of damage as well, as his poise was not the highest, meaning that I was able to stagger him pretty easily, as I managed to get 2 criticals in on my second attempt of the fight and managed to actually beat him on my second try, which was really surprising as all the other remembrance bosses took a lot longer to beat. And I was just super surprised this only took 2 tries when all the others took around 20 to 30 minutes. After defeating him, I get his remembrance as well as 410,000 roots to level up with. But now that Midra is dealt with, I now just have 3 bosses left to fight, with the first requiring me to go through an entire quest line that literally took me an hour to get through, so I'm not even going to go over that. But I will mention that within this, I did end up finding 2 tree sandals, so that was fun. But once I got through that entire quest line, I got to the final area, which was the Finger Ruins of Mir. And as you can probably tell, this quest had to do with the fingers in Elden Ring, which is a whole lore point that I still don't understand, so I'm not even going to try to explain it. But once you reach like halfway up this trail, I get invaded by an enemy that has significance to this quest line, but it's pretty easy as I managed to defeat her without too much trouble. As I then made it to the top of these ruins and it sounded the hanging bell that again has significance to the quest line. I'm sorry, I just did not want to go over that quest line, it was just way too long. But once I sound off the horn, I get transported into the next boss fight of the game known as Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, with this being the secret boss of the DLC, as well as it being the ugliest, because I don't know who the hell came up with the design of her character model, but my god was she gruesome as hell. But as far as the boss fight goes, it wasn't all that bad, as her weak point was pretty easy to hit since it was literally exposed right in front of her, but also her attacks weren't all that hard to get used to since she didn't do many huge attacks, as the most I had to worry about was dodging her slapping attacks, which was pretty fast, and her jumping attacks since I'm always going to be melee range when fighting her. But other than that, it wasn't that big a deal, as I managed to beat her in about 10 minutes or so, which I love, because if I went through a full hour of a quest line only to get fucked for 2 hours on a boss fight, I would have been pissed. So thank God she was at least sort of easy, or I'd probably be still complaining about her. And after defeating her, a huge black hole appears and I guess sucks her in, as I collect her remembrance and 420,000 runes as my prize, as we now get to the final 2 bosses in this game, with the next boss being located in the Shadow Keep once again, but in a completely different part of it, as it's pretty much a dungeon rather than a completely different area, as I pretty much had to run a parkour on roofs and shit to get to this lever that I rotate to drain the entire place, where I make it over to this lift that takes me down to this small cave that leads me to a bridge to a church, I guess, that then leads me to the Scadutree base and the next remembrance boss in the game, known as the Scadutree Avatar. And before we even get to the boss, I think this is the coolest boss arena in this entire game, as we literally are fighting at the base of the Scadutree, like the tree that we've been seeing throughout this entire game, just hanging above the sky. We're literally fighting at the base of it. I don't know, I just found that so cool. But now for the boss fight, which is literally just a giant flower, but it's also pretty difficult, as the whole gimmick behind this fight was that every time you killed it, it would just come back twice as strong with new attacks. As in my first few tries, I was getting hit a lot and honestly didn't expect it to keep respawning over and over again. So when I killed it and only had like a few flasks left, I was like, how the hell am I supposed to beat this thing? As most of the attacks were just throwing roots at me from the ground and really big slap attacks, which are really hard to dodge for me anyways. But I think the hardest attack to dodge was its explosion attacks in the 3rd phase, as it would just start shining and then explode randomly, shooting projectiles around the room, which was also the prime opportunity to attack it right afterwards, as it dies for a few seconds. But overall, it was a pretty simple boss in terms of attacks, but it took a lot of getting used to, as you're pretty much just fighting 3 separate bosses in the same fight, which was honestly the hardest part about it. But I think the head being the weak point did save this fight from being insanely difficult. But I did manage to beat the boss in about 30 minutes, which was a pretty long time. It definitely could have been a hell of a lot longer if I was worse at the game. But now that I've defeated the Scadutree Avatar and collected its remembrance as well as Miquella's Great Rune, yeah, I was surprised when I saw that too. It is now time to fight the 10th and final remembrance boss in the Elden Ring DLC, who I actually managed to miss when going through the questline from before when trying to find the Mother of Fingers. As I came in before, which I completely neglected to mention, is probably the coolest thing I've seen in this game thus far, as in order to get to the area where I fought the Doubletree Sentinels, I had to use an emote towards the statue of Marika to have the secret entrance open up, which I thought was so cool in the moment. But pretty much I came here and didn't even bat an eye to this entrance, as I just wanted to get through that questline. But now it's finally time to enter and face off with the final remembrance boss in this DLC, known as Commander Gaius. And I gotta say, he was also pretty challenging, mainly because his attacks were all really quick and out of nowhere, as most of the time I didn't actually know when or what to expect when he attacked. His second phase was definitely a lot easier than his first, as his first phase attacks pretty much gets transferred into his second with the addition of 2 new attacks. But I think once I got a hang of the first phase, the second phase was a lot easier, since it introduced one attack that was very telegraphed that enabled me to get some pretty free hits in once he hits the ground, as well as another attack that was pretty hard to deal with, as he pretty much just spawns in a fucking black hole in the middle of the field, which pulls you in like Radahn's pull move in his fight, with this one being a lot worse since he can just attack you while you struggle to escape it, which for the most part will never happen. But this fight overall was a good challenge, as I managed to beat him in also 30 minutes, but I will say that it took quite a while for me to understand when I could and couldn't use certain moves, because you all know me, I love my jumping heavies and my bloodhound finesse, and many times in this fight those were my demise. But in my final attempt, I still used my jumping heavies to get a stagger off, but for a majority of the fight I was just using basic attacks and trying jumping heavies here and there. His attacks were so quick, it was almost impossible to land every jumping heavy without being hit. But after one final power drill attack from the sky, I hit him with the final bloodhound's finesse to end the fight and defeat Commander Gaius as the final remembrance boss fight in the Elden Ring DLC, as I collect the remembrance of the wild boar rider and move on forward, where I find this talisman and also this woman riding a wolf attacking me, who apparently happens to be his wife, which isn't fully confirmed, but people seem to say that she is, as after killing her along with her husband in such brutal fashion, I head on through this building where I arrive at the Scadutree Chalice, where I find a bunch of Scadutree fragments just laying around the floor, as I head back to the Grace and level up my Scadutree blessing level for the final time up to level 14, as we reach the end of the Elden Ring DLC and the end of the video, as I have finally beat the DLC and defeated every single remembrance boss that this game had to offer, and it was a really fun experience. I know I said I really enjoyed the base game when I played it, but this DLC just took it to a completely different level, as I was so surprised at how much content there really was, and there were just so many things I saw and played through that absolutely blew my mind. So to those of you that haven't played this game or want to give it a try, please do so, because it's amazing. But I truly hope you enjoyed this video, as a lot of work was put into it, and if you did enjoy this video, please subscribe and like the video, as it lets me know that you guys are liking the content coming out, and I will keep producing these types of videos because they're so fun to do and gives me an excuse to play many of the games I have in my Steam library without feeling like I'm wasting time. And if you made it to the end of the video, you're an absolute MVP, and just know you are what makes me continue making these videos. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you all in my next journey. Peace!